question or two about some of the evidence. We talked about Meta engineers saying that they realized what they were doing was crossing an ethical line, that they felt they shouldn't be doing it, but they had to cut some corners. Let me just ask you, did Meta ever try to hide what it was doing? Did it try to hide the fact that it was pirating these works?
What the documents show is that in 2024, when Meta began to use Anna's archive, it decided intentionally to not use its own servers and instead to go through Amazon Web Services in order to ensure that the seeding, the sharing of pirated works would not be traced back to Meta's own IP.
It doesn't sound to me like a company and executives that think what they're doing is above board. It sounds like a company that thinks that what they're doing is probably illegal in some manner, but they want to go on doing it anyway. Let me just show you a couple of documents.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm your independent political analyst, no spin, no partisanship, just honest analysis of the political and legal flashpoints shaping our society. Today, I want to talk about a hearing that frankly should concern anyone who cares about ethics in tech, the rule of law, and the future creative work in America. We're diving into a Senate hearing that focused on explosive allegations. That Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, knowingly used pirated content to train its artificial intelligence models and try to cover its tracks in the process. Let's unpack what was said, what the documents reveal, and why this debate is far bigger than just one.
Help us understand what we're seeing here. These are more Meta engineers now, again, working on AI. We've got the first one, Nikolai, who says, not sure we can use Meta's IPs to load through torrents pirate content. Ha ha. I emphasize, these are their documents. I mean, for all of Professor Lee's, and again, I appreciate Professor Lee making these arguments, but for all of Professor Lee's comments that we're not sure if it's really pirated or not, they thought so. This is Meta. Meta thought so. The next person says, the next employee, I'm curious to start looking at some samples, but I feel like we should get some clarity on what's allowed and how, smiling emoji. Nicolay again, ha, yeah, I think torrenting from a corporate laptop doesn't feel right. I mean, what are we looking at here, Mr. Pritt? I mean, is this an attempt to be above board and forthcoming and, they think everything's fine?
I think that is a very difficult conclusion to draw from these documents. And with all due respect to Professor Lee, as I am still litigating the case against Meta on behalf of a group of authors, Judge Chabria in that case specifically declined to decide whether Meta's piracy, what it has engaged in terms of the downloading, the making available, the making additional copies and then sending those copies, over 40 terabytes of data to other individuals, is in fact fair use. And no court, including the Supreme Court, has ever held that rank piracy is somehow fair use. And instead, the Supreme Court case law, the still law of the land, says that fair use presupposes good faith and fair dealing. I will leave it to you whether or not you think any of these documents shows good faith and fair dealing.
Let's just look at one other document and ask ourselves if this looks like good faith and fair dealing. More Meta employees, more AI engineers. Frank, can you clarify why we can't use Facebook internal for this again? Frank Zhang replies, we've got to avoid the risk of tracing back the seeder from a Facebook server. And he clarifies, avoid the risk of tracing back the seeder download are from Facebook servers. So here we have Meta employees saying they know they're pirating, they think it's ethically wrong, they think it's illegal, and they are actively avoiding trying to create a paper trail. They're trying to hide it. I mean, that doesn't sound like fair use to me. Does it sound like fair use to you, Professor Lee? I mean, do you think this is fair use?
I would just say I agree with Judge Chabria's approach. The distribution claim is still live in the case, and this aspect of the torrenting may well be infringement and not fair use.
I'll just say this. If this isn't infringement, Congress needs to do something. I mean, if the answer is that the biggest corporation in the world worth trillions of dollars can come take an individual author's work like Mr. Baldacci, lie about it, hide it, profit off of it, and there's nothing our law does about that, we need to change the law. And if nothing else comes out of this hearing today, I hope that's it. And I hope that this is motivation to this body that we need to be paying attention to what's going on here. Mr. Baldacci, you said you'd rather live in a different planet if there was AI that could write your books. I'm sure that will never happen. They'll never write your books. I want to live on a different planet if this can go on and it's perfectly legal. We've got to do something about this. Let me just ask you, Mr. Pritt, finally, what about Mark Zuckerberg and all of this? I mean, do we think that Zuckerberg knew about this, approved this? I mean, what's the evidence suggest?
Certainly the documents that have become public in the case explain that the decision whether or not to use Library Genesis, which is a notorious illicit marketplace, for example, for actual training as opposed to exploration, was escalated to Mark Zuckerberg.
I think the judge said something to this effect. Let's just look here if we've got it. That in fact, Zuckerberg was asked about it. There it is. In the spring of 2023, after failing to acquire licenses and following escalation up to Zuckerberg, Meta decided to just use the works acquired from a torrenting platform as training data. So they just did it anyway. They just, do it anyway. Forget it. Don't pay Mr. Baldacci. Don't pay anybody. It costs too much. A lot cheaper to take it for free and then make billions of dollars off of it. Listen, I'll just conclude with this. I want to thank all the witnesses for their testimony. And Senator Welch, if you have more questions, or Senator Durbin, I'm happy to let you ask those. For my part, I just want to say, I think that this is a moral issue as much as anything else. I think this is an issue about who we're going to be as a country. Are we going to be a country, as is written into our Constitution, where we protect the rights of our citizens? It's part of what makes us Americans. And we welcome the creative genius of people like Mr. Baldacci and the marvelous diversity of imagination and viewpoints and perspectives that has come to characterize our country. Are we going to protect that? Or are we going to allow a few mega corporations to vacuum it all up, digest it, and make billions of dollars in profits, maybe trillions, and pay nobody for it? That's not America. That's not our country. It never has been. Listen, I'm all for the free market. I'm glad Mark Zuckerberg can make his billions. That's fine, but not by running over people like Mr. Baldacci or anybody else, or any young author who's trying to get a start, or any other person, creative, non-creative, or just a working guy who puts something on Facebook. Why should all his stuff get taken? I just think that's wrong. I think it's morally wrong. I think, frankly, it's not consonant with our principles as Americans. And I think we can and should do better than that. Senator Welch, Senator Durbin? I want to thank again the witnesses for being here. Thanks to each of you. I know you had to travel far for this. And thank you for accommodating our schedule. Thanks to everyone who's been here today. And with that, we'll stand adjourned.
Great, thank you.
One company or one lawsuit. This is about where we draw the ethical line between innovation and exploitation. So what's this all about? According to recently unsealed internal documents and Senate testimony, Meta engineers acknowledged in writing that they were using content from pirated repositories like Anna's Archive and Library Genesis to feed AI systems. These archives are well-known online hubs for illegally shared books, research papers, and other copyrighted materials. What's more troubling, the engineers admitted it felt ethically wrong. They made jokes about torrenting pirated works from corporate laptops. One even said, quote, "Not sure we can use Meta's IPs to load through torrent pirate content," followed by a haha. This wasn't a gray area. The engineers understood what they were doing. They were just doing it anyway. And it gets worse. The document suggests that Meta intentionally routed their download activity through Amazon Web Services to avoid having it traced back to Meta's own IP addresses. This wasn't an accident. This was a calculated move to create plausible deniability. One employee asked why they couldn't use Facebook's internal servers. The response? We've got to avoid the risk of tracing back the seeder from a Facebook server. This kind of language makes it incredibly hard to argue that Meta was acting in good faith, a legal standard that's critical in fair use defenses. Let's be clear here. No court, not even the Supreme Court, has ruled that mass piracy for the purpose of training an AI model constitutes fair use. In fact, the Supreme Court has repeatedly emphasized that fair use presupposes good faith and fair dealing. So the argument that Meta's conduct could be legally justified under fair use is at best legally uncertain and ethically flimsy. And this isn't just about Meta. This is about a growing trend in Silicon Valley, where companies scrape massive datasets, often without consent, to feed into machine learning models. The results are impressive, but they come at a cost that, right now, is being borne almost entirely by creators, authors, artists, journalists whose works are being used without permission and without compensation. Now here's where it escalates. According to testimony, the decision to move forward with this data, even after licensing negotiations failed, was escalated to Mark Zuckerberg himself. And the documents reportedly show that after this escalation, Meta decided to proceed anyway. That's a big deal. It suggests this wasn't just a rogue team of engineers. This was a high-level corporate strategy. The CEO was allegedly aware of the risks, the legality, and the ethical implications, and chose to proceed regardless. That opens Meta up not just a legal risk, but reputational damage that could stick for a long time. One of the most powerful moments in the hearing came when a senator said, and I'm paraphrasing here, if what Meta did is infringement, then Congress needs to act. Because we can't have a system where a trillion-dollar company can steal an author's work, hide it, profit off it, and face zero consequences. Now, that's a strong statement. But from a policy standpoint, it hits on a fundamental issue. The law hasn't caught up with the speed of technological innovation. AI is outpacing our legal framework. The rules around copyright, fair use, and consent were built for another era. And now, we're seeing what happens when there's a vacuum. Let's think about the implications for creators for authors like David Baldacci, who was mentioned during the hearing, or for indie writers, musicians, and even regular people posting online. If this precedent is allowed to stand where your content can be taken, processed, reassembled, and monetized by AI companies without your consent and without compensation, then what incentive is there to create in the first place? And look, I'm not anti-innovation. I support the incredible potential of AI. It can revolutionize education, medicine, climate science, you name it. But innovation without accountability leads to abuse. And that's the tension we're grappling with here. So what happens next? The courts will decide whether Meta's actions constitute copyright infringement. But in the meantime, Congress may be forced to step in, to clarify what counts as fair use in the age of AI, to establish new licensing frameworks, and maybe even set up a system for compensating creators whose work trains these models. If we want a healthy digital ecosystem, we can't let it be built on a foundation of exploitation. To wrap this up, I'll say this. The Meta hearing wasn't just about pirated books or corporate misconduct. It was a moral moment, a question about who we want to be as a country. Do we stand for individual rights, for the rule of law, for protecting the creative spirit that has always driven America forward? Or do we let the largest tech companies on earth swallow everything creativity, privacy, accountability in the name of progress? It's a big question, and we'll be watching closely. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this analysis helpful, hit that like button, subscribe for more breakdowns, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is what Meta did defensible? Or is this a turning point for copyright in the AI age? Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay thoughtful.